Hello, welcome back to Dragon Dreams. My name is Ivan, and it's been a very long time since I've made a video for reasons that aren't worth going into life. This video is not a response. Well, it is a response, but it's not a criticism, more of a critique of Professor Dungeon Master's video, the adventure that changed D&D forever. So that's in the description below. And in this video, Dan Masters, Professor Dungeon Master, argues, I think correctly, that Ravenloft, the adventure, not the setting, but the actual original adventure for AD&D First Edition from back in the 80s, was the adventure that started the whole thing that changed from a more tactical dungeon crawl, hex crawl kind of style of Dungeons and Dragons and flipped it into this more narrativist style where you have a narrative. And I'm not here to say he's wrong. I think he's right. I think Tracy Hickman, in fact, was very instrumental in doing that, because there's a number of Tracy Hickman adventures around the same time that have that sort of narrativist style. I am here to talk about my perspective on this, however, because I love dungeon crawls, and I want to have my dungeon and eat it too. And I'd like to talk about how we can do that. How we can have dungeons that are the old-fashioned types that we all know and love or hate, and how we can have those be stories. And the crux of the matter is that in that, Professor Dungeon Master talks about how Tracy Hickman has these criteria for what he thinks is a good adventure, and it's pretty clear that there are some earlier adventures that are really famous that he's referencing. So, for example, is talking about, like, there's a bunch of orcs and hobgoblins and other evil humanoids living in caves in the same ravine, and they don't get along with each other at all. In fact, they hate each other so much they're going to kill each other, and yet they're neighbors. And there's a feeling that doesn't make sense. Or there's a feeling that there are these dungeons that are often called funhouse dungeons that seem to be designed specifically for the PCs to go through and be challenged, rather than having the rooms actually make sense. I would like to talk about how I think that those old dungeons are great, and how I think that we can make them as narrativist as Ravenloft, basically. So I think that the two dungeons that stand out to me as obvious ones that might be under criticism here. One is B1, In Search of the Unknown, and the other B2, Keep on the Borderlands, in which the Caves of Chaos, the main dungeon in it, is exactly a ravine full of lots of caves full of monsters that don't get along with each other. So that's probably what Tracy Hickman was referring to. And I think that the key to having something that's both a dungeon crawl and a narrative is, frankly, to rationalize. Now, rationalization may be something that we definitely don't want when our politicians do it, or we don't want it when we're doing something serious in real life. But when we're just playing in an amateur entertainment medium, which is what role-playing games are. The role-playing games themselves may be produced by, as big of a corporation as you like Hasbro, or by as indie a gamer as you like somebody out of their garage. But the play itself is amateur, because if I'm the dungeon master, I am an amateur. I'm not usually a professional. I mean, unless I'm, you're paying me, which some of them do, I guess, now. But So I don't think there's anything wrong with rationalizing. And we all know that these adventures are not scripture, at least I hope they're not. Maybe they are for some people. But for most of us, they are adventures where we're explicitly told to make these our own. And In Search of the Unknown is a perfect example of that. I mean, what more making your own can you get than you actually don't have monsters and treasures in the dungeon. You're actually told to populate the dungeon yourself as a learning exercise in learning to be a good DM. So, let me start with In Search of the Unknown. In Search of the Unknown is often characterized as a funhouse dungeon, and there's truth to that. I mean, it has these zany, zigzagging corridors that, are just seem to be there. They have places that teleport you. They have this weird rock or crystal or whatever it is, where if you eat parts of it, you gain special powers, or maybe you get something bad, like a curse, or maybe you don't get anything, and it's like, what's that about? And the rooms are all kind of spaced out in this sort of odd, kind of haphazard thing. There's this great place that I think is so memorable for so many of us who like dungeon crawls, which is the room full of pools of weird liquid. And, some of them might be good and some of them might be bad, and you don't know. You have to, dip your 10-foot pole in. And when I dipped my 10-foot pole in, my dungeon master said, your 10-foot pole is now a 9-foot pole. And it's great, You're trying to problem solve and figure out this bizarre, zany room that's hundreds of feet long, that contains all these pools, and you're kind of where's the narrative? I get it. I think it's a valid criticism, but I would like to say how I think it's pretty easy to rationalize and come up with pretty good narratives for all this. So we are given some background. The dungeon was built by a fighter named Rogan and a wizard named Zelagar, who are almost certainly evil. I mean, I'm going to stick my neck out here and say they're definitely evil, because we're told that they use things like slave labor. We know in the rumors section that one of the rumors is that they employed orcs, and that rumor turns out to be true, because the rumors are all flagged as being true or false. And so, it's these guys are pretty clearly evil. They also, at the same time, saved the local inhabitants around where they made their stronghold from a barbarian raid. Basically just the two of them. So these are high-level adventurers who stopped an entire, you can imagine, sort of Viking-esque army from pouring down into these villages and looting and pillaging. And so, and maybe they did that just to, preserve themselves. Maybe they did that to avoid competition. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why evil people might do that. And I think that's great. It makes them complicated. They're complicated evil characters. Okay. So when we're also told that they deliberately dug out of the hillside and made an underground stronghold. And this is presumably so that, you could easily rationalize why they did this. They didn't want people to steal all the treasure and magic items and stuff that they looted from, robbing tombs and ruins and things like that, right? It makes a lot of sense, actually, when you think about it, to have this underground thing. It also says they used magic, that Zelagar used some of his magic to create this. So if you kind of go, well, gee, how come it didn't cave in? Well, first of all, magic was used. Secondly, there's lots of things that are human-made underground things. There's mines, for example. They, they're kind of famous for caving in, but they don't cave in so much, people don't get the ore out of them, right? So we know that you can build these sorts of things. Also, check out Petra. I don't mean Petra from the Mystara world of Beckby Dungeons & Dragons, who's a character. I mean Petra as in the actual real-world edifice, which is carved right out of a cliff face. It's really cool. Look it up on the internet. There's this like entire thing from ancient times that was carved out of a cliff face, and it's just spectacular. So it is possible to carve things out of a cliff face or into a hill. Now, let's do a little bit more rationalization. Why are there all these weird twisting passages? Why are there weird teleporter rooms? Stuff like that. I can think of a very easy reason. The whole point of this is they don't want people to get their loot. They basically want to be, raiding local ruins and robbing tombs and stuff like that, and they don't want the local government after them, or their country after them, right? So they want a hideout that's impregnable, where you can't get in and steal their stuff. And they also want power. They have some sort of little army of orcs in there or something like that. Maybe not army as in thousands and thousands, but maybe 100. That's not too shabby in terms of getting some minor military things done if they need to. They have their own little piece of the world somewhere that they can, with a lot of power, that they can rule for themselves, and nobody's going to get into it and take it away from them. To me, that makes perfect sense for their stronghold, which is called Queskatan. And so why is there a room that's hundreds of feet long that has various different pools in it that have different properties, some of which are dangerous and some of which are beneficial? Well, it doesn't take much rationalization for that either. Zeligar's a wizard. He's researching. He probably uses those liquids for various purposes. Maybe some of the liquids are deliberately put in there so that if somebody comes in looking for the good liquids, they accidentally stick their head or their hand or whatever into one of the bad liquids and it doesn't come out. And, less to clean up, if a raider comes in and dives headfirst into the pool of acid. Why is there a stone that if you chip it off and eat it, it will grant crystals? That's weird. True. But again, Zeligar's a wizard. It could all be put under the rubric of wizard. It's maybe something they found in one of their adventures. It makes perfect sense to me that there would be some sort of weird thing in a fantasy world that would do this. Maybe, why haven't they eaten the whole thing? Maybe they're still researching it. Some of the times you eat it and bad things happen to you or nothing happens to you. Maybe they want to figure out how they can get good things from it every time, or get the wishes that they want to not what the crystal wants to give it. Okay? So suddenly we're starting to get a story here. And we're also told that they have henchmen. The henchmen aren't listed. Where do the henchmen go? Where are they? Are they like in the local villages that are around? Do the local villagers still sort of see them as kind of like their liege lords, or fear them as, tyrants? We're told that Zeligar and Rogan went off to the barbaric north and died somewhere. Is that true? Did they really die? We don't know. That's what the rumor says. But this is a game of heroic adventures in a fantasy world, right? They could still be alive. Or maybe they're like liches or something like that. We don't know. Maybe they're some kind of undead. Maybe they're like the arch-villages of the game. It could be all sorts of things. So if you use your imagination, this adventure actually could have a lot of story. It could have, the villages run by the local henchmen. Think of like in the movie Conan the Barbarian from the early 80s, which is like around the same time. There's when Conan and Subutai, the thief, first go into this big city. They find the snake cult, but they don't meet Thulsa Doom right away. Thulsa Doom is the villain of the story, but he's the arch villain. The first guy they meet is a henchman who's running like a snake tower and like sacrificing, pretty girls to the snake god. and you know, maybe those guys are still around. You know, like maybe people like that are still around. You know, maybe it's like going into like the local village that's near Quescaton is like walking into some sort of like Cthulhu mythos, you know, place like Dunwich or Innsmouth or something like that, where there's like these weird, creepy villagers who are kind of like, you know, we serve, you know, Rogan and Zelagar. Wah, ha, ha, ha. There's a ton of stories there. So I think that a clever dungeon master could probably massage the material they have there into a really good story. And it could all make sense. It could all fit together in a very elegant way. It could be a single adventure, or it could be an adventure hook. Maybe there are treasure maps. Maybe there's notes in their journals for what they plan to do. Why did they plan to go to the north? Maybe there's something there. Maybe they're looking for better treasure and better magic. That would make sense, right? So, or more power. Maybe they want to recruit barbarians to conquer the world or something like that, or conquer their part of the world. So it could be you could make a whole campaign out of, you could have years of pleasure of multiple adventures that are all about, you know, Rogan and Zelagar if you wanted to. So let's switch over to Keep on the Borderlands. Now, Keep on the Borderlands does indeed have the famous Caves of Chaos, which is indeed a ravine that indeed has lots of caves that are like hundreds of feet or hundreds of yards away from each other that have different, disparate, evil humanoids, like orcs and hobgoblins living in them, who hate each other to the point where they're willing to fight wars with each other and kill each other. And the question is, why are they all living together? Well, I could actually think of a lot of reasons. Think back to Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, in the Two Towers, there's this point where Merry and Pippin get captured by orcs. And the orcs are fighting. Some of the orcs are the orcs of Saruman, and some of the orcs are the orcs of Sauron. And they're trying to fight over who they're going to bring, which master they're going to bring them back to, because neither master has said, there's the Ring of Rings that's the most powerful ring in the whole world, get that, because that would be stupid to tell your underlings. They just told them, get halflings and bring them back to us. So there's these Saruman orcs want to bring the halflings back to Saruman, and the Sauron orcs want to bring the orcs back to Sauron. And they fight each other, and while they're fighting, of course, Merry and Pippin escape. So the idea of evil guys fighting each other makes perfect sense. They're evil. Evil people don't get along with each other. They're not very harmonious. They don't work things out. So that part makes perfect sense. Of course, now you could ask, well, why would they live together? Why wouldn't they just annihilate each other? In this little tiny ravine that's only like a few football fields deep and like 1 football field wide or something. Well, we have to remember that in Lord of the Rings style high fantasy, there's this concept of like the evil Dark Lord, right? That recruits the baddies to do things for them, right? And we can't really imagine that, you know, like the orcs and goblins and trolls and, you know, whatnot, and there are many different tribes and so forth who serve Sauron or who serve Saruman in Lord of the Rings, will like get along fine and dandy if they didn't have evil overlords forcing them to. No, they get along because their evil overlords force them to, right? Or because there's a greater cause, which is kill all humans and elves or something like that. They've been given by their evil masters. Now, there is a group in the Caves of Chaos that would fit just that role, or at least be the henchman for just that role. And this is the Temple of Chaos. There's a temple which is chaotic if you're using the 3 alignment system. And remember that back in the days of the 3 alignment system, lawful was described as typically good, and chaotic was described as typically evil. It's apples and oranges to the 9 alignment system. Okay, so lawful doesn't mean... So chaotic, like lawful and chaotic don't necessarily have the same meaning that they do in the 9 alignment system. So when they say they're chaotic, it's a temple of chaos, they're probably not lawful, they're probably not chaotic good. They're probably chaotic evil. Okay, or it's chaotic meaning evil, like it's chaotic as in evil because chaotic people are described as typically evil in the 3 alignment system. Okay, and chaotic is in opposition to law, order, and justice. All right, so it's perfectly possible in the 3 alignment system for chaotic people to work together for the common goal of being against law, order, and justice, if you see what I mean. Because they're trying to overthrow the powers of law, order, and justice so that they can rule without justice, with tyranny. So the priests of the cult of chaos, it seems like the natural story here is that those priests have gathered these disparate orcs and hobgoblins and goblins and kobolds and so forth, who would otherwise kill each other if they were in close proximity. And there's a lot of skirmish and bickering and things like that, because that's part of these humanoids' nature. They hate each other. And it might be like there's a lot of work to crack the whip over these guys and force them to get along with each other. Doesn't mean the PCs can't turn them against each other. If I were the dungeon master, I would say, yeah, sure, they ought to be able to turn themselves against each other. Another thing in Keep on the Borderlands is that there is this room full of skeletons. And I always thought that was kind of an interesting room. It's like, it's sure to be neat to explain that. Why are there skeletons? Aha! They're not that far, as I recall, from the Temple of Chaos. Maybe the skeletons were raised by evil clerics, or chaotic clerics, if we're in the 3 alignment system. And maybe the skeletons are kind of partially there as more evil minions. But maybe, since skeletons are mindless, maybe they're also there to be the enforcers. Like, they're the mindless enforcers of the Priests of Chaos. It's like, you orcs and hobgoblins get along with each other, or we'll send in the skeletons and they'll beat you up. So that's a thought as to how they could be organized. Now, why are they here? Why are they only, like, what, a 1/10 of a mile or something like that? I don't remember exactly how long it is. Maybe it's a 1/4 of a mile from the eponymous Keep on the Borderlands, the actual keep. The keep, as the name implies, is on the border of something. Of what? Of the local kingdom? Of, if you're in Mystara, of the Grand Duchy of Karamikis, or Karamikis, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. If you're in Greyhawk, I think it's, turns out it's in Yeomanry is one place for it. But the point is, there's some human realm that is being guarded by that keep, right? So why would a ravine full of evil humanoids who hate each other, who are being dominated by priests of chaos, maybe skeletons, have set up shop so close to this human fortress, which is guarding this human realm? Aha! Maybe to invade it. Maybe they are gathering to invade the keep. Like, that makes perfect sense, right? So there's a story there. And Professor Dungeon Master talks about having a ticking time bomb kind of a scenario. You know, you have a timer. You have to get this done in so much time. Well, there's your timer. In so much time, in so many days, they are, wherever or whatever, they're going to invade. They're going to besiege the keep. on the borderland, the actual keep. And you PCs need to go in and either do espionage or just, wipe them out or whatever before they do that. In order to save your human realm, which is because it's the realm that you're from. That would seem to make perfect sense. And if you're elves or dwarves or halflings, I mean, presumably you're on the side of the humans against, like, the orcs and the hobgoblins. So there you go. There is a story. And so I would say that although I think it's true that, honestly, these dungeon crawls were made with a non-narrativist idea in mind, I think it's perfectly plausible to make a story out of them, and I think narratives can be made out of them. And so I think that we can have our dungeon crawls and eat them too by thinking through what the story is and coming up with a story and building a narrative around the dungeons. And it just takes a little bit of creativity. And after all, that's what this hobby is about. Fundamentally, I think we play tabletop role-playing games because we're creative. We want to be creative. We want to tweak things and, tinker with things. So that's my take. I will also encourage people to take a look at an earlier video I did on 4 perspectives on TTRPGs, because I argued there that there are four basic takes on them. There's what I call dungeon crawling, which is the tactical kind of take. There's simulationism. This is a simulation of a heroic fantasy. There's narrativism, which I think is what Professor Dungeon Master is talking about. He's arguing that Tracy Hickman ushered in the narrativist, what I would call the narrativist style of play, which is we are participating in communal storytelling. And then there is problem solving, which is more like you're in imagine a game like Myst, one of those old adventure games from the 90s or early 2000s, where there's all these like little machines and stuff to tinker with, except that there's a human being running it instead of a computer running it. So that makes things more interesting because you could have rulings over rules and more of a sense of a reality grounded in a fantasy milieu. And so you might want to check that out. I've also put links to that. And anyway, I hope you've liked this video. I wonder what you think about this. Please put your comments in the comment section. You can disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. Or you can agree with me. If you're just like a total, Professor Dungeon Master devotee, you're perfectly welcome to defend. And again, this isn't really a debate. Actually, it's a yes and kind of a thing. And hey, if you're Professor Dungeon Master and you're watching this, please, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, I don't think we're really arguing. I think in some sense we're kind of dovetailing. But whatever it is you have to say about this, please do so. And as always, if you like this, please consider subscribing. Please click the like button. And I will catch you in the next video. And look forward to a new video pretty soon, because I am back to making videos for my channel. And from me to you, keep on dreaming, everybody. All right. Bye.